Do you want to make a 3D printed zombie cap head mask thing with like a bunch of shrubs? Well, let me show you how. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Luke, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I made this 3D printed Captain America zombie looking thing. I'm going to be going through the files, what the paint jobs, some of the resin printed stuff, and some of the other little bits and pieces that I added along the way, including a lot of the weathering. This helmet is definitely a very fun build if you want to practice some airbrushing skills, because that's mostly how all of this weathering and detail and all these resin printed parts. But it's also a really great way just to practice some sanding, just to practice some boring old rattle can stuff. But without further ado, let's go and find some files. All right, so the first thing, as always, is we're gonna get some 3D files. And for the files, I'm gonna be using this channel's sponsor, DO3D, and using their Zombie Captain America variant. So as you can see, these are the files. We've got two different variants in it. We've got the sort of one with his mouth closed, and the one with his mouth opened. And you can see they've been broken down into a ton of different parts, which is going to be really helpful because we're going to be doing a combination of resin printing and FDM printing, because I'm not sanding all of the little eyes and these eye things and the details and stuff because I am too lazy. You will also notice there is another variant within this package, which is the sort of skull version. So there's none of that drool sort of thing over his mouth. So these are the files. Once they have been downloaded, this is what they look like. So we've got this variant where we've got the mouth closed and all of the rest of the helmet, which is the one that I'm going to be doing because I really like that idea of the teeth, a little bit of the skull, and then all of that drool, which is going to be some really good airbrushing techniques and some hand painting and some sort of other sort of unique things that we're going to be using to make this thing look really, really good. And then you've also got the one with the open mouth and stuff where we've got a mesh, which fits with the same dome bit here. They just are interchangeable so that you can have sort of the both of the two. And then you've also got the one right here, which is the one with the skull with the broken tassel off his chin. And then this is the other variant where it's just got the chin base piece, which connects around. There is top teeth and stuff, but I'm not doing this one. So the next thing we're gonna do is get this main dome printed. And I think the most of it will be probably resin printed. Maybe not this big back piece, because that's all details. So we're going to say this big back piece, the front piece, and maybe this chin strap will be all FDM. The rest of it will be resin printed. So let's go and get them onto the printer, and then we'll sort out some sanding if we need to, and then we'll talk about paint. All right, so the whole helmet is now being printed, sanded, and painted. So if you are interested in that whole side of my sanding process, preparing the print, ready for paint, I'll leave a link down in the video description. Now, I also will say that I did not wet sand this helmet because this is going to be zombie cap. I want to add a little bit more texture. I don't really need it to be super glossy smooth, say like an Iron Man helmet needs to be. So I did skip that step. But if you want to wet sand it just because of OCD or something, that's totally fine. I just chose not to. And then also added a little bit of texture through the painting process, just so it looked a little bit more roughed up. So the first thing we'll talk about is all of these little side details. So this is one of the panels that goes there. There's another on the other side. There's the iframe piece and then the little back piece. So these were all resin printed. Now, if you are resin printing these or FDM printing these, be really, really careful. These are super, super thin pieces. I did break this one. I've had to super glue it back together. You can't tell where it is, but do be careful not to smash these. So the first thing I did was just spray it in some of this MTN dark. This is dark blue, which is the same color as the rest of the helmet. So after it was painted in its blue, I just decided to go through and do a bit of weathering. The weathering consisted of just a nice little black wash over the bit. To get these little darker patches, I just took some black and some brown acrylic paint, dabbed it on, sort of brushed it through, then got some water, washed it away, just the same sort of weathering process if you've ever done black washing before. Once I was happy with it, I just kind of let it dry off until everything had set and all the pigments were all good. Then decided to shoot it in some TS80. Now, if you notice from reference images, these side details are flatter, like a flat color, rather these are more of a shiny, vibrant color. So I just made sure I weathered it first, and then clear coated it in some TS80. The TS80 is just a flat clear by Tamiya. You've seen me use it hundreds of times, and it turned out really, really nice. So onto the helmet. So the first thing I did was spray the whole thing in a gloss black, followed by some Alumoluster. Now, because this is zombie cap, everything's going to be pretty damaged, weathered, scratched, and marked. So I put the Alumoluster down first so that then I can add some latex over it. The latex is just covering up the little chip bits of my Alumoluster, under my blue. And yet again, for that blue, I just used some dark blue by MTN. Do also make sure to do these in really nice light mist coats, or otherwise this stuff is really prone to running really quickly, typically because this is graffiti spray paint, so you do have to be super careful when painting it. I recommend doing about 2 or 3 light coats, typical as that, but do be careful, make sure they're light. Do not go heavy or you'll get big runs and it'll be a pain in the butt to fix. I'll also go over talking about the latex in a bit when we talk about the weathering of the whole helmet, because you can see these are a bit too, well, pristine. And then lastly is on to the mask, zombie piece, and the string harness neck thing. So this was all fully airbrushed. I was just using a combination of cyan and some dark umber. This is Createx's Illustrator range. Super easy to airbrush. I've used them multiple times, and they're really easy to mix and match colors to get sort of these textures. Now, this is also a little bit strange of a painting technique. I don't actually know if it is used a lot, but it worked for this. Now you'll notice I've got a lot of these like higher spots. I've got darker bits, I've got lighter bits, and that was all just seriously adding different coats of paint by not thinning the paint. Now typically you will have to thin these Createx colors by just putting in some reducer and then spraying it through, but I did actually leave out the reducer this time around. Leaving out that reducer gave it sort of a bit of a pigmenty water, sort of not super runny paint that goes through the airbrush, which added like a bit of a speckled texture over the whole thing. And then it was followed on by those lighter browns and darker browns by just seriously adding other layers over it. So the lighter bits are about 2 or 3 coats, whereas the darker bits maybe 5 or 6 coats. But I really like that speckled texture that came out by not thinning down the paints. Now you do obviously have to be very careful with thinning some paints. These Createx I could get away with, but say maybe some Vallejo or some other brands, maybe not as much. So definitely do test it, and also don't try and break your airbrush just to do the same technique. You can do the same technique, it might just take a little bit more trial and error. And last but not least is the mask zombie teeth thing itself. Now I will definitely first say this is very, very green. I should have added a lot less green and a lot more white to get a better texture, but it's alright. I've learned from that mistake, but it does still look really, really cool. So for the green, I just used this Valadarin, and just thinned it down with a bunch of white and then some reducer in there through my airbrush and got sort of the base colored green to start off with. I then followed it up by going through using some blue violet by Createx, doing really, really light mist coats and adding little bits of detail in and around these darker patches, just so things weren't as green. It sort of adds that purpley flesh tone in there as well. They maybe been a bit too heavy, but I think I might go over this with a little bit more of a black wash just to damage up some bits. And we've also got some other weathering techniques, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then there was also a very light combo of yellow through some of the green and through some of the purple. Do be careful on the yellow though. The yellow does stand out really, really a lot on these greens, but play around with it. It's acrylic, so if you don't like it, just wipe it off with some water. And last but not least is the teeth, which are just hand painted in some white and then went through with some weathering. So the next thing we need to do is go and take off the latex, add some shrubbery, add some black wash, and then we should be good. So time to talk about the weathering. Now, as you can see, all of the latex that we put on earlier over our Alumoluster, we've taken off now, and we've gotten this really nice chipped effect over our blue. Now, over those blue, we have gone through now with a black wash using some naphtha and some oil paints. This technique is learnt by Hendry Creations. I'll leave a link down into the course in the description, so I won't go into too much detail about it, but I just placed it all over the Alumoluster pieces to give it a nice depth, a little bit of weathering, a little bit of texture. You especially see that up on the A on the top of the helmet, where that one's mostly damaged, and these bigger Alumoluster side details. And I thought I might as well just try a full black wash using these oil paints. And I think for something like this, it turns out really, really good over, say, just a standard black wash with your black acrylic paint and some water and then some dishwashing liquid to make it work a bit better. Following on from that, you can now see all of the little shrub pieces I've put through the thing. Now, this idea had come from TY Builds over on Instagram, and I really liked that idea of having like the grass moss growing out of the helmet. And once we put that zombie mask in, like so, it kind of looks really, really cool. So for the shrubs, they were just some cheap Vallejo little shrub things. The two that I used was Dense Green and Burned. I just liked the look of these two. This one kind of gave more of a mossy feel, whereas this was sort of like your dead shrubbery or burned shrub, which then are just stuck on. I did put a little dab of super glue here and there just to make sure things didn't move around, but you can see I kind of did a little bit of art around it, putting a little bit of a black wash, wiping it away, then putting the plant on, then blending it in with the rest of the helmet, so it didn't look as just like it's been put there. My favorite one is this one on the side, which has been put on with a little bit of that brown wash around the side, a little bit of black wash as well. Then it's stuck on and then weathered out, which looks really, really good. Now, you'll also notice this mistake that was happened up on top. Now, when I was printing this back piece, it sort of broke during the printing process. I did try and repair it, but then didn't realize it didn't join up to the top head of the helmet. So I just ended up putting some greenery in there. I'm going to put a little bit more down onto this side as well, just to make things look a little bit cleaner. And then the crack up on top, I just filled with Alumoluster, then black washed it, and it looks like it's just been cut around the back of the head, and it blends in perfectly with the rest of the helmet. These little bits up on the top, around here, there, and some on the back is just using some wood filler. Now, I didn't really like how plain it was in some of these spots, so I just put some wood filler, mixed it in with some brown paint, and then place it around the top pieces. I'm going to go through and add some black details over them, just so they're not as in your face. But I liked this idea of making it look like it was rusted or chipped, which was also another lesson from Henry Creations, who goes into a lot more detail about it. I've done the bare minimum on it, but I think it adds a really nice effect just around the back and in those blank areas. So that's pretty much it for now, all of the weathering. The last thing we've got to do is just attach this last bit of detail piece, add the eyes, glue in the mouth, and then we'll be done. And that is the helmet complete. I did very quickly go back over the whole helmet with some brown through my airbrush. I just felt things just weren't really the way I wanted them to. I thought about it, I just went through with some brown and some some yellow, and then just sort of weathered things up just a little bit more, just to add a little bit more detail and blend those eyes in the mouth. I did make the eyes a lot darker, as obviously that's sort of where I guess that deranged zombie sort of comes from. He probably doesn't sleep very much. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up as I speak. But I think it turned out really, really well. I did go and finish off the eyes. They are just FDM printed and then painted in some white primer at the bottom. Then airbrushed a very light coat of yellow over the top. So yes, you can't see through them, but I'm not really wearing it other than now for the video. Other than that, sitting on the wall and then showcasing what you can do with an airbrush. But I definitely think it turned out really, really well. I'm happy with all the Alumoluster. I really like all the details, and I really like the little shrubs that I put around, which was definitely from TY Builds. So definitely go and check out his Instagram. He's got some pretty impressive stuff on there. But I will see you all next week. Next week's video, we'll be going through how I make my resin printed lenses for all my helmets. So like Vader or Ant-Man or my Halo helmet, because I have a lot of people asking about that. So I will see you all next week, but without further ado, let's head to final results.